thank you, the University of Utah Singers, for that lovely version of Jabberwocky. Hi, everyone. My name's Heather. I'm the Vice President of the Lewis Carroll Society of North America, and I also get to present these wonderful events to you throughout the year. And this is a very special one, our 4th annual Carrollian Show and Tell. That number kind of blows my mind that this is the 4th one. We started doing these virtual events mid-lockdown in the middle of 2020. And here we are 3.5 years later. And this is a very special event because we get to hear from members that we maybe don't hear from that often. We get to see, have they added to their collections? Have they made something themselves? You never know what's going to happen. And I'm just so happy that you could all join us here today. So without further ado, let's go to Simon, who is the aforementioned Snark filmmaker, Simon DaVison. And he has got some additional info he's going to show you and also tell you a little story about the Isle of Wight. Is that correct, Simon?
The Isle of Wight, yeah.
Excellent, take it away.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, my show and tell is a booklet we have just produced, which then leads on to a brief description of a pilgrimage I took to the Isle of Wight this summer to check out key places that I think heavily influenced Lewis Carroll's creation of The Hunting of the Snark. Hopefully, I know you do now because Heather just told you, know that we've made a feature film of The Hunting of the Snark, which is available on Amazon. And as part of our publicity, we have created a PDF booklet, which I think is a little work of art in itself. So this is the cover of the booklet. So it's 8 pages. I'm going to go through it quickly because you can download the booklet, which I need to talk to Heather about. Make sure you can get it off your your Facebook page, maybe. So you can see it describes the film and some of the information behind the film and gives you a flavor of the film, and has links to the film as well. So that's the PDF, which I hope you go and see. But one of the questions in the PDF is this Alice? And the answer is no, it's Gertrude Chataway. So she was a 9-year-old girl that Lewis Carroll met while he was on holiday in the Isle of Wight on the south coast of England in 1875. That's the Isle of Wight. It's down at the bottom of England. And he was staying at a genteel resort called Sandown, which you can see on the east there of the island. Now, we all know that the Alice books were grounded in Lewis Carroll's Oxford life. In the same way, I think The Hunting of the Snark was grounded in Carroll's Sandown holidays. So that's Sandown, a bit later, I think, than when Lewis Carroll stayed there. You can see the bathing machines. I'm pointing at them, and of course you can't see me pointing at them, but you can see them. Carroll had several holidays here at the same time that he was writing The Hunting of the Snark. And the book is dedicated to Gertrude with an acrostic poem. So this is the acrostic poem, which appears in the film. I won't linger on it. You can read it elsewhere. So, and this is a picture, obviously not on the beach, but Lewis Carroll took this picture and set it up. So a great deal is made of Alice Liddell for good reason, but Lewis Carroll's friendship with Gertrude Chataway was much warmer and continued until he died in 1898 when she was in her early 30s. In fact, she spent holidays with him in Eastbourne as an adult. But there was no scandal here, just a reflection of his friendliness to all kinds of people of all ages. In 1875, they were both staying here. So this is the Isle of Wight now, and that is called the Hirshon Hotel, although in Lewis Carroll's day, it was called the King's Head. And as you can see, it's in a sorry state. Sandown, like many English seaside resorts, has become quite run down. And it was going to be developed into a residential home, but the company who were doing it went bust. So Now it's in this state. There's been squatters there and there's been a fire. So it's a bit tragic. But later on, Gertrude wrote about her holiday there in 1875. She wrote this: "Imagine the seaside at Sandown in the Isle of Wight, where lodgings stretched along the front, each with its balcony on the upper floor and standing in a little garden with steps leading down onto the shore. Imagine a little girl about 8.5, absolutely entranced with the lodger next door. To her, he seemed quite an old gentleman. In the morning, he came out onto his balcony, breathing in the sea air as if he could not get enough. And whenever she heard him coming, she would rush out onto the balcony to see him." So there are the balconies, although I have to say they must be later replacements. And I also have to say, in fact, although Lewis Carroll did stay at this hotel, he also stayed at other lodgings along the street from the hotel. So he may have been in those when Gertrude was remembering him. So that's the hotel on the front at Sandown. So Gertrude didn't inspire the poem, but I imagine she listened to versions of the story and maybe helped Lewis Carroll decide on certain themes. I won't go into it, but she wrote about that in the same article that she wrote about seeing him on the balcony. So, but in fact, we know from Lewis Carroll's diary that the initial inspiration came after a night looking after his 22-year-old godson, Charlie Wilcox, who was dying from consumption. And this is another link with the Isle of Wight, as Charlie went to convalesce in Sandown. Later, he was moved to Ventnor, just along the coast, where he died and was buried in November of that year. So this was another site on my pilgrimage. This is the church at Bond Church on the coast, and that's Charlie's grave. So his godson is slowly dying, and Carroll begins a poem about a snark that could be a boojum, which causes you to softly and suddenly vanish away. Is there a connection? I think so. Charlie's death might have caused one of the themes of the poem. My final site of pilgrimage plays, I think, a key part in the geography of the poem, this place. So it's the landslip, which was a Victorian pleasure ground. You can see it written there. This sign is later, but it's on the site of. It was close to Charlie Wilcox's grave. It was and is an area of rocky undercliff that is constantly moving. So this was it. I think this is probably the beginning of the 20th century. This is that same rock now. This is a picture that I didn't take because you can't actually go on this path now because it's so perilous. There's been so much movement and landslip, which is why it's called that, that you can't go on all the paths that Lewis Carroll would have done. So Carroll visited the landslip many times. Here, for example, is his diary entry for October the 8th, 1874. We went over to Ventnor and visited Bond Church and the landslip. A perfectly lovely day. He lists who he was with, but he doesn't say anything else. I mean, he never expressed a huge amount in his diaries. You just get a record of what he was doing. So, and here is a line from, well, here is a stanza from the poem, The Hunting of the Snark. But the danger was past. They had landed at last with their boxes, portmanteaus and bags. Yet at first sight, the crew were not pleased with the view, which consisted of chasms and crags. The site is now overgrown and the many craggy paths are crumbling away. But when you are there, you get a real sense of Lewis Carroll scrambling about exploring and thinking about the poem he was writing. Okay, that's it. Thank you for looking at my holiday slides. Please download the booklet and please watch the film. So now I have to get out of this.
Yes, thank you so much, Simon. That's fascinating to me. Like many of us have been lucky enough to take a pilgrimage to Oxford or maybe even Daresbury, if I pronounce that right. But I don't hear of many people making this snark pilgrimage. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is amazing.
Okay.
And I was just trying to write in the chat there. If anyone does have any questions for Simon, get them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen there, lickety split, because he does have to leave. He had a prior engagement.
Prior
But
engagement.
yeah, but thank you so much, Simon. I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A. And yeah, for the PDF, I guess if you could just get that to me. Have you sent it
Well,
to me? I'm sorry.
it's on our Facebook page,
It's on
but
your Facebook page. Okay.
if you share it, or because I can't share it with you, if you could share
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah. And actually, everyone, that's a good reminder. A lot of you know our Facebook page was flagged for impersonation, which apparently the bots went a little crazy and did that with a lot of Facebook pages of charities and businesses. And so I just yesterday finally gave in and made a sort of replacement Facebook page that is hopefully temporary, but I will put that link in the chat there. And that is where we will share Simon's PDF with all of you.
Okay.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Have a
enjoy your evening.
Sorry to leave.
No problem. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Now, next up, we have someone who I love to pepper with questions during all of our social hours. She comes to almost all of our events, which I love seeing her there, but I love hearing about this ongoing project. She told us about it once before. Was it 2 years ago? I don't even remember.
It was, I think,
yeah.
2001. I didn't participate last year, but I think it was the year before.
All right. So you've seen her here at Show and Tell before, and she will be sharing what's going on with her sewing project. Rebekah, take it away.
Give me 1 second to get my screen up. Okay. Thank you guys for having me back a second round. Get that up. Full screen. Okay. So in 2021, started a new sewing adventure. Last time I shared the 60s patterns I was making. These ones are all my own invention. So these are Tiny Alice's adventures. And it all started in 2021 with this pudding, which I shared at a social hour. And just in case you've forgotten, let me introduce you again. Pudding Carol Society pudding. And because it's ridiculous to leave all the conversation to the pudding, we shall move on. And if Alice is going to have tiny adventures, we need to have Alice. So this was the start of Alice, and we have her apron in process, and this is how she turned out. She was pretty straightforward. Then we have Oh Mouse. He came next in 2022. He is made out of felt and hand sewn, and his whiskers are paintbrush bristles. And then next I had to have a white rabbit. He was also from 2022. And I just put him next to my first Wonderland project, which I made in my teens, and just to show a size comparison. And I had fun with this one because when you make something that tiny, you have to come up with unique ways of doing things. So his pocket watch is made out of a sequin, and his umbrella is a toothpick and a ribbon. Then we have the Queen's Garden. I did a felt flamingo by hand and pipe cleaner legs, and that was in August of 2022. And then January of this year, I made my smallest stuffed animals ever, which were Lewis and Carol the hedgehogs. And Lewis is 3/4 of an inch, and Carol is, I believe, 1.5 inches. These ones are more recent, and I will never ever make a third rose bush. I was going to, but after all the work of getting them together, 2 is good enough. The roses are made out of gathered ribbon, and I used grapevine wire for the stems, and then napkin rings for the pots, which worked out really well. And next we have the hatter, and this is how you clothe a hatter in 9 steps. So step 1, place the hatter on the fabric and figure out measurement of fabric needed for pants. Finger press a hem at the top and bottom. Stitch this. Step 2, fold in half and mark where to stitch so his pants stay on. Step 3, stitch a side seam and a narrow triangular center seam, cut middle of triangled crate legs. And I didn't put it in the step, but you do have to re-sew that sometimes. Step 4, repeat the similar action for the vest and the coat. Step 5, fold a tiny piece of fabric for a bow tie and go mad stitching it because it pops apart. Step 6, repeat the madness with the collar. Step 7, paint marker stripes on his socks. Step 8, make felt shoes and go mad again trying to tie them because that's awfully tiny. And then step 9, provide him with a felt hat that isn't his. And we have the March Hare wondering if maybe some butter would revive him. Oh, and I should mention he also has a little piece of bread made out of felt. And we have the March Hare, and he was made in April of this year. And as with the other animals with whiskers, paintbrush bristles make up the whiskers. And his vest is made out of a ribbon, just like the white rabbit, and seed beads for buttons. And just this past month, I finished the dormouse. So the March Hare now has a friend. This one is more about the props, and I made a glass table out of a plastic champagne glass. I do not recommend going at one of those with scissors. It's very sharp and pointy. And the top is made of a plastic lid from a ribbon holder. And these are my in-progress pictures. So I have started the mushroom. It's got a little tiny wood disc for the base and a wooden dowel glued to that, which the mushroom slid over. You can kind of see underneath, I gathered the bottom so you get those nice ridges. And I recently picked up a ruffled ribbon for the caterpillar. So this is the in-progress pinning of how I want him to look. He will have beaded eyes, so kind of like the straight pins. And it will have a little tube of fabric in the middle that will make up his belly. And here's some other in-progress stuff, fabrics I got. So it's a little hard to tell from these, but the fabric on the left is actually half green, half red. So when you move it, you kind of get that shimmer. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be the lobster. And then one of the bottom fabrics will be the crab. I've got silver for the foot fishman or footman, and the 2 golds are for the Queen of Hearts dress. I also have fabric ready for the oyster, which that one's kind of been an up and down thing because I wasn't entirely sure how I want to do it. I might use rickrack on top, shiny fabric for walrus, and 2 options for the sheep. And then moving on, I've got some upholstery fabric for the mock turtle in addition to cotton. Really hard to tell from this picture, but the bottom fabric actually has 2 sides. So I can use one side for Bill and the other side for maybe the frog footman or maybe a crocodile. It's not quite gold enough for that. Then I have some feathers for the griffin and a flowery fabric for the Duchess's dress. And then the dodo I have been trying to get done for quite a while now because I was trying to work on him when I did the mouse and I just cannot make up my mind on the colors. So those are all potential dodo feathers, and then some fake fur for the puppy. And for fun, I have added some of my sketches. I don't sketch for all of them, but these are some of the ones that I have done. And that concludes the slideshow.
Amazing. I mean, I know this is just one example of dozens, but did you say the White Rabbit's pocket watch is a single sequin?
It is a single sequin. It has a little tiny piece of fabric glued on top, and I painted the lines on it. I did not try to paint numbers because that was way too tiny, but yes, it is a sequin. So I'm
Wow.
having a lot of fun finding all these little things and thinking of them in new terms and
Yeah.
how I can use them.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean that might be my favorite use of creative use of objects. I also love that champagne glass is just amazing for the glass table. What a great idea. Wow.
It's a literal glass table.
Yeah. Ouch. Yeah. Did you cut yourself?
I did not. I was very careful. I actually ended up putting it under the table and trimming it so that way if anything went flying, I wasn't gonna, cut myself or poke my eye out.
Good thinking. Have you ever injured yourself in the making of this project?
Not with these ones, no.
Okay.
On occasion, I do poke myself with a straight pin or a needle because I do sew with them propped on my leg because they're so tiny.
Yeah.
But for the most part, these ones are pretty safe.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for that update. And if you could stick around, we'll do a joint Q&A at the end. I don't see any, I see tons of praise in the chat. I don't see any questions yet. And everybody, next up is someone whom I've never met, because like I said, you never know what's going to happen here at Show and Tell. I don't think he received my presenter email, but I believe I can promote him to panelist right now. Mr. Till Turner, you should get a message on your screen asking if you would like to talk. I think it's working, everybody. Exciting.
I've got it.
All right. Hi, Till. Thank you so much
Hi.
for joining us. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm the new kid on the block
Excellent.
here in Virginia. So nice to be a part of you.
Welcome.
I just came upon the society, very recently.
Wonderful.
And just a little bit of backstory. I don't have a PDF because what I'm going to show you is probably a little bit better if it's actually filmed instead of created flat. But I'm an English professor here in Virginia. And one of the classes I teach is children's literature. And we get the ball rolling with Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass for a number of reasons, because it was so monumental in the turning point for children's literature. And it pokes a lot of great humor at didacticism, which, not everything has to teach a rote lesson. Of course, and Alice makes fun of that throughout the entire both novels. So anyway, one of the things I have my students do, since they're coming from various backgrounds, is to do something that's not necessarily research-based. They have a paper that they write later, but I ask them to do something fun, and they can do something craft-oriented. They can write something, whatever they feel like. To get the ball rolling, what I did did a little Mad Hatter hat. And it's got a little ribbon there. Pretty simple, but it is it's super sculpty. It's really what it is. And it's baked and then painted in acrylic. So you kind of see the structure there. So when they realized that, something was made tangible for them. Oh, you mean you really do mean we can make something? I go, yeah, please. And then bring it in. And then because it's a literature class, I want to know what it is about the stories that prompted you to go in the direction you did. I love the Mad Hatter's play on language because it's throughout the novels, but I really love his nonsense. I have a background in semantics, so I like what appears to be nonsense. So he's one of my favorite characters. So we get a little bit more in depth in our discussions once the students bring in their works. But some students have even gone so far as to make little songs of their own. Some of them make nonsense poems. Some of them do fractured verses, fractured fairy tale verses with kind of Alice themes. Some of them write little journal entries about what they thought, the lobster quadrille was supposedly about. The sky is the limit. But anyway, I just thought I would share this as just kind of my little introduction to the society and to say hello to everyone. And for any of those of you who might be teachers, I encourage you to let the students somehow or another jump into the conversation in whatever method is comfortable for them. Because a lot of people are excited about Alice and the stories. And then once they start reading it and getting into the nitty-gritty of it, sometimes the momentum can go down a little bit. So it's good to always keep the magic of those stories alive. And this is one small way to do that. Anyway, that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm so glad you came today. And you remind me, last year at our show and tell, we had a professor who has a tea party class to get his students interested
That would be good.
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Yes. And also, I don't know if you've checked out our YouTube channel, but just for your love of nonsense words, Dr. Ryan Armstrong did a presentation on nonce formation last February that I bet would be right up your alley.
Yeah.
And
It
thank
was
you.
so wonderful that you had Simon here. I mean, it's just a wonderful film. I've watched it twice already. I own it. It's just very, very well done. He's so modest about it. If you haven't seen it yet, do it today. You know, go ahead and buy it.
I second that emotion. Absolutely. I have watched it an embarrassing number of times, really, because I can't believe how much I don't notice. Like, it takes me like 5. Like I finally saw it was like the Chataway's shop or something, like their chocolate shop or something. And I'm like, wow, I did not notice that on the first 4 watching. But just
lots of wonderful illusions.
It's always something
very, very well done.
Well, welcome to the Society, and this was a great introduction to you. And please stick around for our joint Q&A at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And up next, we have our fearless leader, Arnold Hirshon, is joining us, LCSNA president. He's got a few things to show.
Okay, so unlike our first 2 speakers, and actually the third one as well, with all that creativity, my creativity comes not in doing things, but buying things. So what I'm going to show are some recent acquisitions in various categories, ephemera and artwork, sculptures, and books. These are not necessarily the most precious things I own, but I thought that they would be of interest to a wide audience. The creativity on this screen of the artwork is not mine. It's one of my creative sons, Michael Hirshon, who's an illustrator at and professor at University of Utah as a professor of illustration. So that he did that for me for a book plate. So on to some of the more recent artwork, if my computer will let me. So just as a little bit of background, I am a book collector. I don't tend to collect a lot of ephemera. I do collect teapots with my wife, Janice. That collection has nothing to do with the Mad Tea Party. It has to do with just an interest in shapes and sizes of different types of teapots, of which this is a very, 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 very tiny representation of some of the more interesting ones that we have. The book at the top was not a recent acquisition, but it is a custom designed book. It was really for the book binding, not for the text itself. So on a trip to England in last May, I acquired these from Fortnum and Mason. The artist is Rory Doppner. If you go to the Fortnum and Mason site and you hunt around long enough, you'll eventually find large collections of plates and saucers and cups and other dinner plates and everything else. The plate on the left is a small dessert plate, and then obviously a cup and saucer. Artwork recently through Graham Baker Smith. Some of you may be aware of Graham's recent Alice in Wonderland illustrated edition. This is some of the original artwork. This is obviously the Mouse's Tail section of that. He also did an earlier illustrated version that was more in miniature. They're delightful illustrations, and I just love the shadows of all of the other characters watching the mouse as opposed to seeing the characters in full view. I went to an art fair locally. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. The art fair, this artist is actually in Akron, Ohio, and he did not do Alice items at that time. And I said to him, have you ever considered doing Alice items? I had admired an Edgar Allan Poe bust that he had done, and he also does some political characters. And I said, have you ever thought of doing Alice in Wonderland. And within a pretty short order, especially since he was recovering from surgery, he managed to put together a number of sculptures in time for the Lewis Carroll Society's conference in Cleveland at the end of September. And I acquired two of the pieces. This first one is the March Hare. You can see from some different angles. March Hare sits about 6 or 7 inches high. That the whiskers are made out of wire. Here are some other views of the same sculpture seen from, it's very much a three-dimensional look from all angles, front, back, and sideways sort of sculpture. The other thing I had asked him about was, since you do a bust of Edgar Allan Poe and some other characters, have you thought about doing Lewis Carroll? And so he did, and I acquired this one that he did. This sits about 17 inches high and 12 inches wide. Lewis now sits in our living room on a table. You can see the base of the table there. The table has nothing to do with Lewis Carroll or Alice in Wonderland, but it just kind of looks right. And so every time we walk into the living room, Lewis is greeting us, and he's greeting all of our guests now. Now the pose that he's in with the finger and his hand up to his head is actually from a famous portrait of Lewis Carroll. Not quite in this, the way this is shown. And this, I realized later that the direction of his hand and the sculpture makes it look as if this is a teapot, but it's not. I might ask him at some point whether he ever thought about doing Carroll-related teapots, and at which point my wife will throw me out of the house, and she's sitting here right now. Moving on to books, this is a recent acquisition. This was from 1986. This is a limited edition, 99 items made. This was number 39. And for those of you who might have followed the Potter and Potter auction that occurred within the last week and a half or so, this was one of the items that was up for auction that I had acquired. It's an accordion style click tablet designed in the style of an 18th century educational toy. Those are wood engraved illustrations mounted to connecting wooden panels. To give you another sense of what this all looks like, it sits about 6 centimeters high, not 6 inches, 6 centimeters high. It's a miniature book. You can see on the left the front cover and the back, which is the colophon. And then you get a little bit, another sense of what some of the illustrations look like, as well as the text. The text is not, I think text may actually be complete. I actually not read through the entire text. This just arrived in the mail yesterday, so. And then on the right, you can see she's illustrated things like a Mome Rath, as well as the Jabberwock, and there are about 8 illustrations in there and text as well.
You said 1986?
1986. And then moving on, something may have happened here. Something maybe, no, that was it.
All right. I was going to say you are in presenter view, but that's a stunning conclusion, hot off the 1986 press.
Yes.
Well,
So,
thank you so much, Arnold, and everyone. Arnold stepped in kind of last minute. We had a few dropouts from our show and tell, which happens every year. It must be nerves getting on such a huge stage like this in front of all of you. But thank you so much. We got to have something for the collectors. So I'm glad you were able to step in and share some of that. I'm not seeing, oh, wait, here we go. We got a question. Do you have the Jabberwocky to hand? Can you demonstrate it? Ask and you shall receive, Mark Richards. Ooh.
So it comes in a paper case. and it slips out
Oh,
of,
actually, why don't you stop screen sharing so then we can see you much
Okay.
bigger.
right? I'll stop the screen share.
Perfect. And I'll turn my camera off just in case anyone's on gallery view so they get a full view of you.
So this is text as well as, you can see it kind of flips up and down, and it's on both sides.
Gorgeous.
Voila.
Thank you very much. And yeah, Arnold, if you could stick around for a joint Q&A, we have, well, actually, I was about to say we have one more presenter. We have two. I'm calling an audible after Vaughan goes. But yeah, we have two more presenters, and then we'll do a little joint Q&A at the end. And thank you so much for joining us today. Next up, we've got Vaughan Burton, who told us all about his Alice in Wonderland rock opera, which, Vaughan, is it called Croquet or is it called Curiouser and Curiouser now? I forget if you went back to its old name.
It's actually called Croquet.
It is called Croquet. All right.
In its full form. It's Curiouser and Curiouser is a suite that I have on the forthcoming CD that I'm putting out.
Gotcha.
It's a shortened version of the just sort of an Alice suite, I guess you could call it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. And by the way, I can hear you great now. So stay where you are during the pre-show. We were having some audio issues, but I can hear you perfectly. And just let me know when to tee up your song and take it away.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. My name is Vaughan Burton. I'm a musician, guitar player, graphic artist also, to pay the bills. So as Heather said, I started writing this rock opera Croquet a number of years ago and had it premiered back in 2021 here in New Jersey. And it was a lot of fun. It had been kind of swimming around in my head for a long time, and I finally demoed it and started recording it, and finally premiered it. And it was, and I realized at that point how difficult it is to be a music director, having to deal with schedules and all kinds of things that are unexpected, try and schedule people for practices. And but we finally got it done. And I've recently been, at the time, I didn't know that I was going to work on the sequel, which I'm actually now calling Looking Glass World. But at the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to try and do anything about Looking Glass. So I incorporated the Jabberwock story into Croquet, and we actually played it at the premiere. That song is called Reflection. But having not been recorded completely, I mean, since it hadn't been recorded completely, I decided to put it back into Looking Glass World where it belongs. And so it's now called Reflection / Told You Would. And I'll see if I can call up the song titles for Looking Glass World here. Let's see. This one's up. Okay.
Okay, we're just looking at your list of files. Is that what you meant to share?
I'm actually on my I'm showing the titles. Mine.
Do you want to try again with the picking which window you're sharing? Because yeah, we're just seeing that the files.
Yeah, this might help. Is that better?
That's better. I can see it. Perfect.
Okay, so the titles, and they're pretty much set. They're somewhat tentative, I guess, but the titles are Looking Glass World, Told You Would, or Reflection / Told You Would, Bloom, The Little Engine That Jumped, Memories of Me, Oyster Bedlam, Contrariwise, Your Dream or Mine, What We Did Tomorrow, Scrambled to Nonsense, Crossing Over, and Clean Out. And sort of like I did in Croquet, I make Croquet sort of the stages of life kind of story. I had Alice's kind of going back and forth between adult and child in a way, sort of in a transition, coming of age kind of thing. And I wanted to be very spiritual, to sort of reflect DaVison's beliefs and to try my best to put an end to the mistaken idea that he was chemically inspired when he wrote the stories. That was really important to me because a lot of that really kept me away from the Alice saga for a long time. And so I thought it was important to get it out there that there's no evidence that he was chemically inspired when he wrote this book. So, and I wanted to do sort of the same spiritual thing with Looking Glass World. So I kind of wanted Queen Alice to be crossing over and Queen Alice to be almost like Alice becoming a queen, but also maybe becoming an angel. So I kind of wanted it to be consistent with DaVison's religion, the fact that he was a deacon. And I thought that was kind of important. And you could probably figure out what most of the titles are about. Told You Would, the Jabberwock, obviously the Bloom of the Flowers, Little Engine that Jump, about the Little Engine that Jump. Memories of Me is the Forest of No Names, and Oyster Bedlam, of course, the Walrus and Carpenter, the Cherry Wise, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, Your Dream or Mine, about the Red King, the Sleeping Red King, and What We Did Tomorrow about living backwards. That one's about living backwards, and I really want to have fun with that one. There's some strange things to have. I want Alice to start realizing at some point that she's living backward by realizing that she had lived some consequence already, but hasn't encountered the cause. And I haven't really worked that out yet, but I thought it would be kind of fun. Scrambled about Humpty Dumpty, so Nonsense about the night and her relationship with the night. Crossing Over about Ancient Queen, and Queen Alice just is the end of the story. I have little bits and pieces written in most of this, but Looking Glass World, the title track is the one I've gotten most worked out. Just as a little introduction to Rob, before I have had to play the song. It's just a demo. It's kind of rough, and it's meant for a female singer, obviously, but I just sort of did my vocals, and I can kind of hear the influences in a lot of the stuff that I do after the fact. And this one sort of kind of, it has a little bit of a Moody Blues feel to me, I guess. And I kind of heard that just upon listening to it when it was done. There's certain things sort of come out inadvertently when you're writing it. And that's one that I noticed about this one when I finished it. I will say that I put the verses all together. I want to split them up a little bit, but in this really short recording of it, I found that it ended really abruptly when I did that. I put a little instrumental break in the middle. So I put all the verses together and just put a very short instrumental break and fade at the end, just so it would not sound so abrupt ending. So Heather, whenever you're ready, you can cue it up.
All righty. And I'll tell you, for influences, you can do worse than Moody Blues, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to
Yeah.
stop your screen sharing and go to mine. And I think I have a little bit of your artwork queued up as well. All right. So here we go. Sharing. Can you see your cover there? All right. And why don't you and I both mute, and then I will play your song.
Glass world, I could see you. Looking glass world, I feel your warmth even here. Oh, looking glass world, you're so lovely. Looking glass world, my path to you isn't clear. Oh, looking glass world, near yet so far. Looking glass world, leave not my heart in dismay. Oh, looking glass world, help me reach you. Looking glass world, you just a whisper away. Oh, looking glass world, I am changing. Looking glass world, light through a far window streams. Oh, looking glass world, I am fading. Looking glass world, mist in a mirror of dreams. Oh, looking glass world, here before me. Looking glass world, dancing flame so warm and bright. Oh, looking glass world, I adore you. Looking glass world, I belong here, it feels right.
Wow. I'm just making sure. It says it's going for 15 more seconds, but I think that's
Oh,
silent. All right.
it's okay. It's good.
All right. Excellent. I
It-
tell you, your guitar playing, Vaughan, just takes me to another dimension. It's just
I
gorgeous.
appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm still hearing kind of Moody Blues from it. Okay. All I need is the flute, I think.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
but anyway, I kind of cobbled it together in the past couple of days, so I would have a little demo from the.
Well, it sounds beautiful. And a few of those lyrics really stuck out at me. Mist in a world full of dreams, something to that effect.
Mirror.
Mirror full of dreams. Yes, that would make more sense. Yeah.
Just in a mirror of dreams. Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
okay,
And
thanks.
And everyone, I looked it up, and if you want to go to our YouTube channel, it was November 2021 that Vaughan gave us a nice presentation. We had a virtual night at the theater featuring him and a young lady who had written a musical about Charles Dotson's school years, which was fascinating as well.
It was
But
great. Curiouser. I actually saw Curiouser. It was really fantastic. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, they shared a file with me. Probably reach
Ah.
out. We'll probably do that.
wow, who do you
It's
know? I
excellent.
didn't get to see that.
Yeah, it's excellent. You know,
Wonderful. Yeah, I know a few of our members who live in Canada got to see it, and were very impressed with the music and the songs for sure.
yeah, I didn't see it live. I just saw I talked to Piper and she shared it, and
Nice.
it was really good. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Vaughan. I'm seeing a lot of praise in the comments here, but no questions yet. So if you can stick around for our joint Q&A, I am calling an audible. We have one more surprise presenter. As I said, anything can happen at the
Okay,
show
thank
and
you.
tell. Yeah, we'll see you in just a minute, Vaughan.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone. I
you.
appreciate it.
So let me scroll alphabetically here and settle upon Mark Richards, promote to panelist. Mark Richards, welcome.
Hello.
I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for being a last minute addition.
Well, thank you. Gosh, I'm not sure I can follow all that really. I feel a bit of a fraud now. I've enjoyed this so much. So, yeah, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, I will. I'll go.
Yeah.
Everyone, this is Mark Richards. You know him, you love him. You're all familiar with him.
Mhm.
No
One or
intro
the other.
needed.
One or the other. This afternoon I acquired a book that rather tickled me, really. I was rather pleased with it, and I thought I'd like to share this with you. You know, collecting is all about stories, really, isn't it? And so I've got a little story, only take a few minutes. Stories that are involved with collecting, sometimes they're more interesting to the collector than they are to the audience, but I'll do my best here. So yeah, I'm a collector, but it all started way back when I was about 15. We grew up in a household that played lots of games and puzzles, you know, logic puzzles and different things you could play on a chessboard and so on. And my brother, who's a couple of years older than me, had this book, The Magic of Lewis Carroll by John Fisher, out of the library. I should probably just explain to some of you younger people out there what a library is. It's a thing we old baby boomers used to be able to just go to and borrow books and things. It's a fantastic thing. Don't see so many of them around these days, but by God, they were good things. So anyway, in this book, which my brother got, I just happened to notice there was this thing on it about the game of logic. Now, some of you will know this is Lewis Carroll's little, well, it's not really a game, is it? It's a thing where you can solve logic puzzles on a diagram by putting little counters. And you have these bizarre sentences like some mischievous creatures are not soldiers, or none of my cousins are judges. And you can put all this onto a diagram and solve the problem. And I was rather fascinated by that. And around that time at school, we just did a little bit about Boolean algebra, which is a slightly different form of logic, but it's the same kind of thing. And I was so fascinated by this idea that there's a sort of mathematics that sits behind the way we think or the way we argue. And So I then looked a bit more what was in this book and became rather fascinated. I'd never read Alice in Wonderland, knew nothing about Lewis Carroll, went out and got myself the Dover edition of Symbolic Logic and the Game of Logic. This is the actual copy. You can see it's worn out. This one, of course, isn't the library book. I mean, can you imagine, not the actual copy, can you imagine the fine I'd have to pay when I took that back? Anyway, so yeah, I got the Game of Logic, and then it went on to that one you all know and love, Euclid and his modern rivals. I like to claim I'm the only person in the world who's ever read Euclid and his modern rivals before reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. It's holding up quite well, that claim, because I've actually not met anyone else who's read this. So anyway, the point is, this all started what is basically a lifelong fascination with Lewis Carroll. Joined the Lewis Carroll Society, started collecting illustrated editions. It just grew and grew. I became, I started organizing events and things. I've traveled places, I see people, lots of friends through Lewis Carroll. It's just become a lifelong thing. Even to the point where, as a student, I was reading this one, Symbolic Logic by William Warren Bartley, when I should have been reading whatever books about linear algebra or whatever it was I was supposed to be on. And anyway, to get to the point, about 3 weeks ago, there was an exhibition of book illustration, cartoons, and so on at a gallery called Chris Beatles Gallery in London. Chris Beatles is worth checking out. He's one of the best dealers of original illustration art anywhere. Always gets good stuff, lots of good cartoons, always a few Alice-y things there. He's got a few things on his website at the moment. And I was invited to the opening of the exhibition there, which had nothing to do with Lewis Carroll really, but we were invited to the opening of the exhibition. And the man who did this sort of opening speech, or whatever we should say, was John Fisher. So fantastic. So I went along and I met John Fisher, and I took a copy of the book along and challenged him. I said, my lifelong interest with Lewis Carroll started with this book. Would you sign my copy of the book? And he did. He signed it for Mark. Curiouser and curiouser with a shared enthusiasm and thanks. Cheers, John. Well, I mean, I made a little bit of a joke with him about it, saying, my interest in Lewis Carroll has been quite an obsession. I said, I don't know whether I should be thanking you or blaming you for introducing me to this. But that was 49 years ago. So 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was so pleased to meet the man who wrote the book that introduced me to this whole thing. So now, today, or the last couple of days, Catherine and I have been out in Oxford doing a bit of research and seeing some stuff. And we got back yesterday. And when we're away, our neighbour looks after the mail and things that comes in. And this afternoon, the neighbour knocked and said, there's a package for you while you're away. When we opened it up, it was a copy of The Magic of Lewis Carroll in Italian, sent to us, totally unexpected, signed by John Fisher. He'd sent me, but he'd got my name and address from somewhere and just sent me the book. Says, for Mark, once more in Italian, all my best, John. And I don't know, maybe for you this isn't such an exciting story, but I was actually rather moved by this and felt the need to share this little story with people. So there we are. Just one little footnote to that is that, of course, actually, we already had a copy of The Magic of Lewis Carroll in Italian. So now we have a spare copy. So if anyone here would like a copy of The Magic of Lewis Carroll, unsigned, of course, because I'm keeping this one, but they can have my spare copy. Send me an email or something. If you, Catherine's put my email address in the chat. So if you'd like that, I'll draw, I don't know if anyone wants it, but if you'd like a copy of it, we'll post it to you. And there we are. There we are, Heather. That's all.
Of course you already had a copy of it in Italian. You can't just have one in English. Don't be ridiculous. I love it. That's a lovely story. Thank you for hopping in last minute and sharing that with us. And everybody, Mark and Catherine are always so generous. You're not actually required to give something away every time you speak to the LCSNA, but of course we are so grateful that they do. And I'm sure you're going to be getting multiple emails. You might have to do some sort of drawing, I think, I would guess. And right now, I would like to welcome all of our wonderful panelists back. Go ahead and turn on your cameras and your microphones. And I was wondering if any of you have questions for each other, because I'm sure you found each other's presentations fascinating. Does anyone have any thoughts? Mark?
Well, I do actually, because it follows on from the question I asked Arnold about that Jabberwocky thing. Because I'm not sure if you realize, but I think the idea is you hold the thing up by the top piece and then you hold the next one and it click, click, click. Are you able to demonstrate that, or is it too delicate to?
Well, we'll find out. I have to take it back out of its sleeve, which is not easy.
We're doing this all for the click, click, click. It's important.
So I believe what you're saying, Mark, is that if I hold it this way,
Yeah, let it hang down. Yep. And then I think you hold the
Next
bottom.
one.
one down. Hold now hold the second one and let go of the top one. The other, yeah, well, maybe you have to go it the other way.
And maybe center it a little more. It's way out to the side. Just put it right in
Yeah.
front of your face.
yeah, it just happened by accident.
Yeah, I think you can keep. The idea is you can keep doing it. I think someone has put a couple of comments. Molly Martin has said it's generally called Jacob's Ladder. I think Kevin Seagal has put something in there about it. But
Yeah, I don't want to try it too much, but yeah, you did get
Understandable.
a little bit of a demonstration of it.
Right. I'm seeing a question in the chat here for all of you. For those of you who became intrigued with Alice at a young age, how did your school friends and relatives respond to your curiosity? First of all, of the group here, how many did get interested when they were still children? Mark told us when he got interested. Nope. So Arnold.
My teens. So
Teens,
technically,
that counts,
yeah,
sure.
that would count.
It was more late teens, early 20s for me.
All
Mhm.
right. And was it something you shared with your school friends and relatives? How did they respond? Does anyone?
Obsessively so.
Yeah.
No, I did not share it with my friends in school at that time. It was graduate school that I shared my interest with somebody, and I've often told this story, but she said to me, "You should collect," which is the worst thing anyone can ever say to a librarian.
Nice. Until what was the reaction?
Oh,
Your
it was
friends
always
and-
positive. Usually other people were equally as interested at one point. A lot of times they just forgot about it. And then my interest kind of reignited their interest.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
That was
it's
my
always
point
been
of view.
positive. And even the college level students, I mean, they really enjoy reading Alice and seeing it through a different lens. Because a lot of them had read it when they were young, but then to
Right.
read it critically and still enjoy it and and kind of peel back some of the layers of the meaning and see how much he's poking fun of didacticism in the novel and how Alice grows to some extent. It's fascinating. Yeah, it's a endless mine of information and fun as well.
And Vaughan, were you saying that's been your experience as well, that it kind of reminds other people of their love of Alice? And you are muted, by the way.
Sorry. No, I was just saying that I was in my 20s too when I
Okay.
first got into it. So I didn't really get into Alice. I did see the Disney movie, right?
Mhm.
But I didn't look until my 20s.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me. Like, I wonder if you all went back in time and read it when you were 7 years old, like cover to cover, would it have had a huge effect on you then, or did it all come in good time, happened later? And we have a question here, Vaughan, for you specifically. Was your croquet premiere in 2021 fully staged? I don't believe so, right?
No, it was just a concert. I wanted to kind of keep it in its purest form. I'm a progressive rock fan, so I kind of wanted it to be a concept album more than anything else. I don't have a problem at all with it being staged, and I would love for that to happen eventually. I mean, if Andrew Lloyd Webber wants to call, and then that would be fine. But yeah, I would certainly enjoy a stage production of it, and I didn't write it just refusing that to ever happen or anything, but I wanted it to be at the premiere of it, I wanted it to be a concert. I wanted it to be an experience for me.
Gotcha.
And so thanks.
Heather, can I just go back for a moment? This was my first experience with Alice, which was crayon coloring it in with my brother.
Nice.
I'm not just that page, on many pages. And so I've said that becoming a Carrollian was my life's penance for ruining a book.
Did you get in trouble for that, or was that accepted in your household?
I did that when I was sufficiently young that I have no memory of either doing it or what the consequences might have been.
But you know what happened. You have the proof.
I have the proof.
And I have the copy that was most used in high school. And these are my sketches on the back. I hate the puffin cover. And so I covered it with paper and did my own little sketches on the back. The front's plain, but
Oh, that's amazing.
I adamantly dislike it. And I remember sitting in my English class and drawing on the back. It could have been history because I had the same teacher 2 years in a row. But I remember sitting there drawing them.
I love it. And I love that you both still have those. I think it must be at my parents' house. I've said it before. My first Alice book was these companion library books where there was one book on one side and you'd flip it over and one on the other, but it wasn't Wonderland on one side and Looking Glass on the other. It was those two combined, and then you'd flip it over and it was the 5 Little Peppers and how they grew.
I have that edition.
Which I guess did not really stand the test of time so much. And I read it so young that I did actually think it was one book. I didn't understand that Wonderland and Looking Glass were different. And I was so confused every time. I'm like, is she in purgatory? What happened that all of a sudden she's stuck in this living room with a cat and she's apparently never leaving?
I believe that edition was published by Grosset and Dunlap. Is that right, Arnold?
Random House. The
Random
one I
House
have.
was it? Oh, okay. Right.
This was with the Fritz Purdell coloring. The ones that he colored as opposed to the ones that I colored were somewhat, he did a somewhat better job of it than I did.
Yeah. No, I was referring to the pig and the pepper or whatever it's called.
The 5 Little Peppers and how they grew.
5 Little Peppers, where you turn it over. Isn't that? You need to look it up in. You need to look this up in what we in this household called the Green Book. Alice in the World of Wonderlands, Volume 5, is it, or 4, 5? Isn't it?
They are not continuous. They are separate volumes. Volume 1 and 2 of the English language edition.
I know, but we call them all 5. We call them the Blue Book and the Green Book, and you know, it's the it's the book that lists. It's the Bible, isn't it, for us collectors? And yeah. I'll look it up later and tell you how valuable it is. You know, it doesn't have prices in there, but I'll make something up, Heather, to make you feel like you knew had the valuable book.
Excellent. Yeah.
Hey, Rebekah, sorry if I missed it, but how long does it take, like, start to finish on a project?
It depends. So the felt ones take a little bit less. The Dormouse took me probably about 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
And that one was using the machine. The Alice and the Hatter took the longest because he's got the vest, the pants, the coat, the hat. So he took me probably altogether, I want to say I worked on him like a week and a half. I kind of split it up. But he was a little more intensive. Alice's dress took me about a half an hour to get on her. I didn't size it quite right, which when you're making a little doll, you don't usually have to worry about things fitting just perfectly. But yeah, the animals take less time. The March Hare was done within a day. So it just kind of depends on how much is involved. The hedgehogs took longer because I had to sew the yarn on afterwards, so that was a little bit tedious. So they have a felt base and then the yarn was sewn on top of it. So just depends.
How about the caterpillar? How long do you think that one will take?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fold it over, if I'm just going to put the thread around it. Because like I said, I'm going to make a little strip of fabric that'll look kind of like think of a tiny worm of fabric basically, and that'll go in the center. And I'm not sure if I need to sew the ripples on the side together so that they look more like legs without pulling apart, or if I can just get away with doing it in the center. So we'll see. That one's still kind of a work in progress.
TBD. All right, I'm seeing so many people in the, sorry to cut you guys off, in the chat here talking about their first experience and what their edition was that they first read. So I think we should adjourn to social hour. I'm putting the email that has the link to social hour in the chat there. If y'all open that up now, it won't it won't make you leave this Zoom session. Arnold, I do see we're all going to call it the Green Book now. Jill Birnbaum wants to know how many Green Books were published.
There were 100. So this is complicated. There's deluxe edition, which is the one that Mark was just referring to, and there were 100 copies of that printed, about 80 of which have been distributed. So there are about 20 left for sale. And the standard edition should be coming out very, very soon. We just hit produce on the master copy to make sure that everything looks right. Should have that within a week or two. So I would say by roughly January, first 2 weeks of January, the standard edition should be available. And we're still finalizing some pricing on that. There's a new pricing option that should make it significantly less expensive than we originally expected.
Right. Well, that's good news. I like to make my life more difficult, and I'd been saving the Green Book. It was still in its packaging, and I was going to wait until Christmas to open it. But about 10 minutes before our presentation today, I thought, I'm going to make an unboxing video and show it to everybody. And I unboxed it and I made the video, but I haven't posted it to YouTube, or not to YouTube, to Instagram yet. So maybe during social hour, I'll post it and then I can share
As you
it.
found out, Heather, it was very carefully packed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, you know what? I did the cutting first because it was taped so tight. I thought I'm going to cut myself on camera and this is going to be some sort of gory video that we don't want. But yeah, it was very, very well packaged. Yes. And you know what? So everybody, again, I put the link there that will lead you to social hour. And I'm actually going to steal Elizabeth Rice Monroe in the chat here wrote that all of your creativity, it's such an awesome display of humanity. You make me feel happy. And I think that's a great note to end on. I think we all get that feeling from Carrollian Show and Tell, one of my favorite events of the year. So thank you so much, everybody. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, happy all the holidays. And hopefully we'll see you at social hour in just a few minutes. And thank you to our wonderful presenters.
Thank you, Heather.
Bye.
Thanks to
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Oh, proud to stay.